Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Cup Duet Reviews. I'm Jillian Robinson, your associate producer here at Cup of Hemlock, and I am joined by one of our amazing artistic producers, Mackenzie Horner. Hey, Mackenzie. And today we are unpacking Diana the Musical, which we have both viewed on Netflix. And we're going to talk about the production. We are going to talk about how it was revered, how it was reviewed, and just to give us, let's do introductions first to start us off, Max. So how you doing?
I'm doing okay, darling. Pip pip and all that good stuff, Chimney sweeps and Mary Poppins.
Oh my goodness. The accent. Yes.
Yes.
That's
exactly.
Good. What's in your cup, Mac?
Oh, tonight I have grapefruit and tangerine Crystal Light. So
Nice.
One of my favorite flavors. So that is what I'm drinking tonight. A nice little Crystal Light drinkaroo. What about you, Jill? What is your ensemble? And what is in your cup?
Yeah, so I decided to kind of go for an 80s look, an 80s vibe. I got the turtleneck. I have this like floral patterned shawl, if you will. I have some chunky clip-on earrings, little triangles, black triangles here. Nice. And my drink, I'm having some Pinot Grigio in like a fancy champagne glass. And beside me, for visual viewers, I have a water bottle, but also the wine bottle to sort of refresh as I may need as we go through this panel. So to get further into it, before we dive into discussion, Mac, let's just let our viewers know a little bit about Diana the Musical. So Diana the Musical, music and lyrics by David Bryan and Joe DiPietro, directed by Christopher Ashley. And as I mentioned before, this musical is streaming on Netflix, started streaming October 1st, 2021. And basically, this musical was recorded the summer of 2020 for Netflix. And then its opening night on Broadway was November 17th, 2021.
Yep.
Correct. The show closed on December 19th, 2021. And so there was a total of 33 performances and 16 previews. And that was the run. That was the run on the stage. But uniquely, it is preserved on Netflix for our discussion, our delight, etc.
It kind of all came about after the pro shot of Hamilton came out, and all the other streaming services were like, what else? Like, what do we got on our roster? Because Netflix has The Crown. They're kind of like, oh, perfect. There's a Diana musical coming. Let's pro shot that one, and then we can recommend The Crown and Diana the musical as like a dual watch routine there. So hence why it did what it did. At least that's my theory as to why Netflix decided to randomly pick up this musical.
Yeah, I think so too. Definitely picked up on the sort of riding the Diana wave, if you will.
Big Diana wave.
Right, because we're all anticipating The Crown season 5 to come up to continue that Diana wave.
Yes, November of this year, we have The Crown season 5 with Elizabeth Debicki playing Diana, Imelda Staunton playing the Queen, Jonathan Pryce, Prince Philip, Dominic West as Prince Charles. It's going to be a roaring season from all the filming they've been doing and following the filming along. Today they actually were out filming stuff for the 1992 Windsor Castle burning. So,
that's exciting. A fun fact.
Fun fact of the day.
To take it back take the spotlight from The Crown and back to Diana the Musical. Yes. Let's dive into our discussion. So first, let's unpack the production itself a little bit, Mac. Yeah. What was your favorite production element and why, etc.?
The costume changes. The quick change costume changes. That's where the stage magic was when all of a sudden Diana appears in her wedding dress.
Yeah, she kind of just steps in.
Yes. That's the moment you and I rewound multiple times to try and catch the change to figure out how she did it, because it's such a bit of wonderful theatrical magic that's like, oh, perfect. I mean, there was some stuff that was obvious, like the one time where it's the body double walking across the stage when she turns around and she's in the outfit. But there's some really great moments like that. And I mean, the costume design really did capture some of the highlight looks of Diana, from her pregnancy kind of blue sailor outfit to the FU dress, or the revenge dress, as it's more well known. There's that dress, like there's a few her wedding dress, like there's a few very iconic Diana looks that definitely the costume designers did their due diligence and went into the archives and really kind of found some of the really highlight pieces that everyone kind of knows Diana for. So
Yeah,
that
and
was
is it the iconic is it a buffalo or sheep sweater that she has?
deer. It's a deer.
It's a
A
deer.
doe.
Okay.
It's a doe.
Yeah, I really appreciate.
Wait, no, sorry, it is a sheep, because there's the one black sheep.
Yes, the one
Sheep,
black sheep, right.
yeah, on her sweater. I mean, could you be any more like transparent
detail.
with the message you're trying to send?
Right. No, but then that like same sweater was a costume piece for her in The Crown. So
in the crown, it's deer, because Peter Morgan has this big thing with stags and does.
Yeah.
In the Queen with Helen Mirren, there's a whole subplot about the hunting party hunting this big magnificent stag.
Yeah.
And in The Crown, the episode where Diana shows up at Balmoral, they're also hunting a doe, and Diana's the one that helps catch the doe, which once again, much more subtle symbolism in that one compared to the black sheep sweater. But once again, the costume designers, I mean, you can see in the background here, I mean, we have the Queen and Charles. I mean, they do look, dress-wise, like their characters. They certainly didn't skimp on that element, because that is a very notable thing about fashion in the 80s and 90s, is that it is very distinct. It does, once again, like, it's funny to think now that the 80s and 90s are historical time periods, but they are, that people absolutely go back to and can look at the references and go, okay, what was popular, what wasn't popular. And Diana was a trendsetter in fashion, so it's important to get the fashion elements right, because that is a major part of her character, is that influence that she had on the fashion world.
A lot of flash, a lot of texture,
a lot of ruffles,
a lot of color pop. Yeah.
But then we see in the second act, when we get into more of the 90s, it's more of the sleek pantsuit, or the businesswoman, like blazer and skirt look, that kind of really kind of takes shape, which is kind of that change that we saw in the 90s, right? So once again, doing a really good job capturing the elements. So I definitely say the costume design, the costume quick changes that were done were definitely the highlight production element for me.
Yeah, love that. I totally agree. My favorite production element was kind of, so this is going to sound broad, but I'll unpack it a bit more, but like the mise en scène as we go scene by scene. So what I found with this production, it was kind of snapshotty, as opposed to sort of like chronology. So I did like, though, when there would be sort of a longer conversation or a longer moment was going to be had on scene on the stage, when the sets were a bit more elaborate, or like structurally placed a certain way. So for example, their Welsh tour, when they went to Wales, I really liked the way they lined up the folks, like introducing themselves.
Yeah, and
like there was
line,
just it kind of had like that 80s, like, this is gonna sound so odd, but if you picture like 80s, sometimes I picture like the blocked out like lightning bolt, like, you know, that kind of like rigid retro-y kind of vibe. And I found a lot of our like setting the stage, as you will, were kind of placed in that way. Even when there was like the runway with the FU dress, like the sort of blocked out, the way that the chorus members kind of flooded in purposely on like a jagged diagonal in some of the scenes. So I'm not really sure exactly specifically an element, I guess, like I would say, I guess, the mise en scène of each sort of snapshot moment. And we had our like the boxing ring between Camilla and Diana, right? Where that was kind of, again, like a little red ring around kind of 80s vibe.
Rocky.
So yeah, I thought it was a really great container for, like you said, Mac, the like costumings and all the other things and that needed to pop. Like there was a really good unique structure. The only thing that kind of threw me off is because I felt this piece was snapshotty and not really like a through line to follow all the way, it was a bit of a disruption to kind of be like, okay, now where are we, right? Or like, what is the scene mapping out? It took me like an extra second to kind of ground myself into why the stage looks like it is, right? Or like, why did they choose to kind of bring in both beds and have, I thought it was really unique. It just sometimes like it pulled me out of it a little bit to as opposed to just kind of having one stylistic staging choice throughout, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense to me. Yeah. Definitely like I definitely liked more of the sturdier sets, like the queen, like the officer's wife scene, which we'll get into momentarily. But like the queen's sitting room set was a really great one, because that was like a continual home base set. Like the show starts with that set and the queen showing up saying, "Charles, find a wife," and then we continually go back to that moment, to that setting with the queen always in her kind of in her kind of cage there, kind of like ready to go, which was great. So yeah, and there definitely were some really good moments, like the opening of Act 2, where it's the two different bedrooms. Like you have Charles and Camilla in one, and you have Diana and her riding instructor in the other, and those two perfectly just pictured worlds of two very different looks. Like Charles and Camilla have more of a posh cottagey look, and Diana and her riding instructor more urban, more metropolitan city look. And it just kind of shows, just once again, reflects the strong differences between Charles and Diana. Why another reason why they were very much oil and water. Like they should have gone together, but there were just fundamental elements of them that just were never going to click with one another. So so the sets were another great way of explaining that to the audience.
Great. Okay, so we're gonna stay with the production practicality of it all, and I'm gonna pivot us to our music and lyrics by David Bryan and Joe DiPietro. The score, Mac. What did you think of the score? What was your favorite song?
So score. This definitely felt like it was trying to be 80s, like kind of big box musical, very broad stroke. Like this show. Okay, so this is where I'll get into it here. So this show unfortunately got itself tripped up in the material, and the songs and the score are definitely a reflection of that. Where my favorite song of this whole piece is An Officer's Wife, which is the 11 o'clock number sung by the Queen to Diana. And what I like about this moment is that it's a character moment. It's a really big moment to kind of really get underneath the character and get away from the superficial and into the complexity of a character. Like the Queen's moment here, which she's describing being that joyful moment of life where she was an ordinary woman. She was an officer's wife. She wasn't princess. She wasn't Queen Elizabeth. She was just officer's wife Elizabeth Mountbatten. That is who she was. She was married. She said it many times in interviews that was one of her happiest times. And the fact that she's harkening back to that and trying to connect with Diana on a level, saying, listen, I know life is tough. I know it's hard. I know this isn't working. But there's a rhyme and a reason for everything that plays out in this. And the fact that we've got to this level at the second last song of the number, and we had this whole rest of the show that was very superficial. We never got to that deep of a level anywhere else in the show, really. And I think that was the I don't want to say the failure, but definitely the pitfall of the show, was that because there was so much material for these two to cover, there was not enough time for them to really sink in and give everybody that chance. Like Charles and Camilla deserved a number like that, because I know people hate on the two of them, and the fact that recently Camilla was announced that she will be a queen consort to Charles, and everybody was like, oh, but Diana, blah blah blah, she's people's princess. And it's like, I get it, but Diana's passed. Camilla is fulfilling the role. She is Charles's wife, and she has been his support. And I mean, from everything I've read about the two of them, he's never strayed from her. Like, yes, Charles cheated on Diana to be with Camilla, but between Charles and Camilla, there has been this strong bonded relationship between the two of them. So for some kind, they're soulmates to one another, really, when you read about the passion they have for one another. So the fact that we got so little of understanding of why are these two people together? Why is Charles blowing up his marriage? That somebody that the crown loves, the people love. Like, why is he being so destructive and hurtful to this woman who has done nothing wrong to him, except that she's not the woman he wanted in the wedding dress at the altar? And the fact that we never got the complexity of that. Like, he has this big explosion, Sondheimian and angry, vengeful number after she does the dance at the Royal Ballet. That really makes it that's supposed to be this big kind of blow up final straw moment that leads to their separation, the war of the Waleses in Act 2. But the fact that we never got the depth that every one of these characters deserved the depth that Judy Kay got to give Elizabeth at the end of the show. That really made you connect with her as a character. Because if you take that number away from Elizabeth, she becomes the dowdy queen who was saying, Charles, get married. It's like, fix the problem yourself. It's not my problem. All right, Diana, peace out. Like, that would be her arc without that song. Because you gave her that song, you gave her more depth and more character to connect with. That I left that show going, yeah, I see why the queen has endured for so long as this lovable monarch. Like, she's 95 years old, and she's still highly popular. The fact that people are concerned for her right now, rightfully so, because they know she was positive for COVID, and the worry and the care that everybody around the world has for this woman is understandable, because she is someone who is witty and personable and kind to a certain level. And the fact that this musical gave her that moment that you could connect with her. Because if not, you would come away going, wow, that woman, excuse my language, but she's a bitch to Charles and everybody.
There's your one swear word.
yeah, there's the one swear word. But that's exactly what you would come away thinking about the queen if you didn't give her that moment. And the fact that Charles and Camilla don't get their moment, neither does Diana. Like, even what's the Diana's lover, the horse riding instructor, Hewitt. Yeah, Hewitt. Like the fact that he kind of gets a moment like that in the bedroom with her. And I'm like, oh, you're actually giving him a bit of depth, a little bit more than like anybody else in this show, and an interesting choice to make. The fact that he's kind of pleading with her to like not go out and just stay in, be the homebody, not draw attention. It's interesting, but I would say definitely the score trips itself up by trying to tackle too much, and then therefore not giving all the characters the right chance that they deserve to be fully developed. And so that's kind of my long lecture.
Okay, no, I love that, and I think you bring up a really good point too of Mac, and our viewers know that Mac and I love musicals, have been a part of musicals, and there is an element of musicality in musicals is to advance emotion, right? Is the reason why someone goes into a song or a dance or both is because there's no more words left to say. It's overflowing so much with emotion that it's expressed now through these other creative art forms. And I totally agree with you that that song resonated with me as well, because the queen was given sort of her moment to ground down, and we got to see her cracked open a little bit. And I agree. I think the score and the script didn't marry themselves very well for me. And I think that was part of the problem, as the script didn't really allow there to be other grounded moments for these characters to sort of have their individual explosions. And when they did, they it was kind of like, this might be a little bit difficult to explain, but for example, in Charles' outburst post the dance sequence, that was kind of to drive the story more so than it was to kind of get a scope into what he's dealing with or who he is as the character. So I felt that throughout. I think everyone like sang the score beautifully, and I did
absolutely
love the musical, but similar to what I said with the sort of choppy snapshot vibe of the piece by like scene by scene. I had that by song too, because
Yeah.
there were some moments where, and again, maybe this was the vibe. It seemed like we were listening to a jukebox a little bit, right? Where you're
Yeah.
kind of rolling through randomized,
Mhm.
because I kept kind of asking, like, what is the genre of this piece? If it's supposed to be kind of like 80s funk, where it's kind of like, we go from ballad to upbeat sort of rock opera, if you will, to the classic like musical theater
Yeah.
piece. But I didn't really have an answer by the end of it. And again, maybe that was a choice, like to
Mhm.
not pigeonhole it to be
Yeah.
one thing or the other. But again,
Mhm.
it just unfortunately had me
Mhm.
constantly stepping outside of my viewing
Yeah.
experience to kind of suss out what's going on here and
Mhm.
then jumping back in.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I guess the
Yeah.
score and the music for me, super strong, just
Mhm.
like the aesthetics of the staging,
Mhm.
but a little bit too discontinued for me to kind
Mhm.
of um give it my full
Yeah.
bravo, if you will.
Yeah.
Um, but
Ooh.
my favorite song was "The Dress," because
Oh yes,
I
the fuckity
love
fuckity
Bruce
fuckity. Yeah,
Dow,
he's
and I
so
think that
great.
was just
Yeah.
such a fun breath of fresh air,
Mhm.
right? It was just kind of like a silly. We got to see, it's him and Diana, the only thing on stage. It's like a dressing scene, so like the stakes
Mhm.
are a little bit more vulnerable,
Yeah.
and we know what's coming up. We know that it's going to be the revenge dress. So the fact that there was just some it was like a song and dance moment, right?
Yeah.
And the stage was just filled with color, with like
Yeah.
how Bruce sang it, with
Mhm.
yeah, like so many again, it was a little the song itself was a little, the vibe of it was a little oddly placed to
Mhm.
kind of what I was saying of how
Yeah, like
not really knowing why this type of song is included in
Mhm.
this mishmash score, but
Yeah.
I loved it. I had a lot of
Mhm.
fun with the dress.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, I'll piggyback with you on this
Yeah.
because like the dress song, the feckity 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 dress, they chose good moments, the fact that the revenge dress is an iconic part of the War of the Waleses in the early 90s. But they chose to go about it the wrong way. They went for the Flash versus the character. Like,
Yeah.
there should have been a moment of Diana before she steps out of the limo, where it's
Yeah.
like she knows what she's doing. Like, Diana was not naive. She was not dumb in the sense of she knew what she was doing when she stepped out of that limo in that outfit. It was a
Yep.
strategic point of it's on the same night as Charles giving his interview. Like she knows exactly what she's doing, and the fact that like makes me wonder of did Diana have second feelings about displaying herself in that way, being so revealing to try and draw attention? Was this the way she wanted to fight? Like, what's
Yep.
going on with her there? Or even like with Charles, like instead of having this Sondheimian, angry, hateful song towards Diana backstage, it would have been better to have the moment almost freeze or slow in time. So like as he's watching Diana do this attention drawing dance, it would be better to have him like sitting in his chair going, God, I just can't win. I don't feel comfortable. And even like the fact that the opening number of the show is this number called in the pages of her book Once Upon a Time. Like Diana opens with Once Upon a Time, and then it would be great to have Charles then come in talking about how the fact that like he can't settle down because they're not Camilla. That's
Yeah.
basically the answer of why he wasn't settled at the age of 30. Was because,
Mhm.
rightly or wrongly because Camilla was married and had a family of her own at the time, but he was in love with this woman, like passionately in love with her. And the fact that like it would be such a stronger choice to have the show instead of opening with this Queen walks in and Charles, you have to get married number. Like out of like Charles, like Diana gets an opening song, Charles
Yeah.
gets an opening song where it's Charles waiting for his mother to arrive in the room, going, "Hey, I know what she's gonna say to me, but I just
Yep.
can't find the person because my heart is not connecting
Mhm.
with anybody but this person who I can't be with." Like
Yeah.
the choice of where they put the song or the choice of how they framed the song was just always off the mark. Like there could
Yeah.
have been such a great character piece within this where you can still do her whole life. I mean, we'll get into more of the history of the way
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
told the story later on. But like we get into her whole life, and the fact that they chose these moments to go for the flash instead of the character that was driving the moment is where they
Well,
really kind of tripped themselves. Is for me anyway.
No, and I agree. And again, as we go further, like we'll definitely unpack this more, but I think it just what comes to mind is remembering that this musical is sort of standing in as a biopic. Like, and we've chatted about this a lot, Mac, in our Crown conversations, but there's certainly no lack of Diana material around the world. There has been shows, there has been movies, there has been podcasts, there has been books. So it's almost like if you are going, it's because she's so revered and there's been so many different iterations of her life and who she was as a person. It's almost like if you are going to do something with her in the media nowadays, it's like there has to be almost like more, what is your why even more? Like, you know, like if you start doing a project, it's like the big old question, like, why are you doing it? And so with this musical, I was so excited because it was like, oh, okay, like coming out of pandemic, like what, right. Like, yeah, absolutely. Let's dive into something to do with Diana with this sort of lens or this in this sort of environment, right? And why now? And I think just, again, I know we are still talking about the score too, but what we've talked about thus far is there almost needed to be more focus on Diana, right? Like I'm saying about like, why are you bringing up another iteration of her? And it was through like the lack of sort of like we've said, like the lack of continuation of story or lack of like you said, that song's missing the mark. It's like I think the more and more at least for me, I watched the piece, I felt like the farther and farther away we were getting from like who Diana actually is. And again, we'll unpack that too. But I think it's really neat that we're finding like the practicality of the production and how that's sort of a bit discontinued is actually reflecting a little bit negatively on the titular character, right? Or the person that we're highlighting. So I think let's just take us to the next question.
Let's do it.
We've mentioned Charles, we mentioned Camilla, we've mentioned our queen. And so Mac, like, what did you think of the casting overall? And I wanna unpack the double casting choice between Queen Elizabeth II and Barbara Cartland. So I'll let you just start us off.
Casting was good. I mean, I love Judy Kay, Tony winner Judy Kay, for playing originally Carlotta in Phantom of the Opera. She was Patti LuPone's stand-in in Sweeney Todd when she played the tuba. Like, Judy Kay is a phenomenal actress. So I mean, she's behind me. And I mean, she looks like the queen. Like, she looks kind of like Imelda Staunton, to be honest. There's a bit of that Imelda Staunton look to her. So like, these characters all kind of worked. I mean, I would say the actress who played Camilla, who is, sorry, can't pull up her name right now. Erin Davie. I would say she was a bit too young for Camilla, because the whole thing about Camilla is that she's elder than Charles and Diana. So I would say they kind of aged her down a bit. I would say the actress who played Diana, Jeananne Dewall, I think is how we say her name.
Gina. It's actually, I recently watched an interview with her, and it is Gina. Just a very fun way to spell Gina. Yeah.
Gina Dewall. So, I mean, you kind of commented on this too. It's a bit of, she's kind of got a bit of a Carrie thing going on with the eyes, very big eyes. Right. So I mean, like, I would say that was a little bit off-putting at times, but her voice was great. Like, vocally, she was easily able to belt out those numbers. The actor who played Charles, Ro Hartofrumpf, I would say he was actually kind of a little bit too good looking to be Charles. Like, once again, not to be mean to Charles, but Charles definitely is not his now kind of disgraced younger brother Andrew, who was always kind of a bit more of the looker of the princes. I mean, Edward is kind of his own thing there. But Charles always had a bit more of a homely look. It was kind of the way kind of people kind of connected with him back, and it was that he was kind of this gawky guy with kind of slender, big ears. Like I was kind of his thing was Charles is gawky, but yet he's this most eligible bachelor in town.
Right.
So I mean, but you look at the guy behind me here, like he could either go on to be cast in like a Marvel superhero movie. I could see that happening. Rogers the musical, cast this guy.
Bridgerton season 3.
Bridgerton season 3. You know, that type of thing. Like he was great in the part. I just think sometimes we went a little bit Hollywood with a bit of the casting, where it's like age Camilla down a bit, make Charles look a little bit more, you know, suave. I'll definitely say though, Judy Kaye is probably, I'd say, the closest hitting the mark of historically the Queen's look. But overall, I mean, the cast was solid. It was, once again, it was their material that ultimately kind of tripped them up in their performances.
Totally agree.
Like as a performer, Jill, you know, there's only so much you can do with the material you're given.
Absolutely.
Like Bruce Dow killed it with his material doing the fuckity dress. Like he stole that scene. Absolutely, he did. He was great throughout as kind of the queen or the princess's royal companion there.
Yep. Agreed.
So for sure, like that was great in that sense. So yeah, I mean, like once again, the cast did good with what they were given. Unfortunately, what they were given wasn't the best material to work with. So I would say that's there. I mean, I will say that it was weird casting the Queen and Barbara Cartland as just because they didn't mesh. Like Barbara Cartland's whole thing was romance. She's a romance author, so it's like the whole thing of, you know, like she's kind of the romance fairy godmother for she really is the godmother for Diana,
right?
Or stepmother, whatever it was, or this maternal figure. So I don't quite see the connection. Like I guess you're saying Queen Cold, Barbara Cartland, imaginary figure, funny, but I'm like, I don't know why you would need to double cast that particular role when you can just get a chorus member, ensemble member to take on that role and have a featured moment in the show.
It almost, just to kind of like, I'll probably answer inverse, like to piggyback off of the double casting, and then I'll cycle back to casting as well. But yeah, I was confused because I personally didn't know the I didn't know who Barbara Cartland was historically and her relevancy to Diana's life. So I was like, oh, who's this woman? And but you know, I'm like, I'm just gonna watch the play and probably figure it out. But then the fact that it was also played by Judy, I was like, wait, is this the queen? No, it's not the Queen. We're not watching the Queen, but like what? So again, it was another one of those moments of like, I had to kind of step outside and make a purpose for it. So like one of the things floating in my mind is like, are these supposed to be like two sort of matriarchal figures in Diana's life, or two these like older sort of guides, or some female role model for Diana to kind of aspire to or to reach out to? Because I felt like the Queen and Barbara's presence in the piece was pretty much equal. Like we kind of saw them both sift in or be sifted into the plot throughout. But again, it was kind of just the idea of including the character of Barbara Cartland was a little bit in outfield for me, because I was like, it'd be one thing if this person in Diana's life, and again, I'm not proficient on Diana's life, so maybe, you know, folks who are more engrossed in the novels and the biographies and the whatever of Diana may be able to correct me. But as far as I knew, just from like the amount of information I did know going into this, I didn't think Barbara Cartland was that big of an impact in Diana's life. Maybe I'm misspeaking. Apologies if I am. But the fact that I kind of had to like figure out, like kind of Wikipedia or Google her on the side of watching the show, which we were able to do because this existed only on Netflix for a lot of us folks who didn't get the opportunity to see it on Broadway. But yeah, so again, it was a moment of this was a choice, and I didn't really know why we were choosing to do this. And I think you make a good point, Mac. Like it would have been super neat actually to see another older actress step into Barbara Cartland, and now we have these two women sort of acting as like grounded pillars. You know, that at least, and maybe if they are a bit shaped more out to be like these matriarchal guides for Diana, like I could maybe see that be a string discovery in the piece, right?
Yeah.
Or symbol in the piece. But yeah, so I guess kind of going back to what did I think about the casting, I feel the same way you did, Mac. I think everyone is so talented on stage. I also want to shout out the chorus. I thought
Yeah.
everyone in the chorus and the ensemble added so much external verve to every scene.
Yeah.
And again, like we talked about the score kind of being not really knowing what genre it was at times, or jumping from like a ballad to a rock opera, like that takes some like physical dexterity and like brain dexterity to have to kind of switch on a dime. I am now in full servant garb, and then the next thing you're like instantly a reporter doing leaps across the stage. Like there was so many twists and turns, no pun intended, with the ensemble that I just thought it was brilliant. It kind of reminded me of Jesus Christ Superstar, the concert version he had.
Yeah, you're right.
I thought the ensemble was stunning for that too, and they really were the heartbeat, like the pulse of the piece in that. And I think this ensemble in Diana the Musical too kind of carried that same role for me. And then kind of what you were saying too, just reifying what you were saying of everyone was such stunning singers and really committed, like through everything in every one of their pieces. And I will agree there were some facial expressions by Gina that I was a little unsure of. It seemed a bit like hostile at times, which again, maybe that was the wanted choice to kind of show what's bubbling underneath the surface or what have you. But I think overall everyone did brilliantly. It's just the material, both song and script, was just they weren't serving each other, in my opinion, and that makes every element of a musical, singing, acting, and dancing, that much harder, right? Because as the performer, you're not only, you are the vehicle to kind of serve the piece. So if you already have the piece kind of be disjointed, you have to, so you serve the piece, but then also you have to kind of piece together what you're bringing to the piece. So if the piece is kind of not knowing what it is, it's like that much harder to kind of string together what you have to bring to the piece, if that makes sense. But I thought they did what they could, but they were served.
They really did.
So yes, so I guess while we're talking about characters and casting, we kind of alluded to this throughout, but I want to go further. So who do you think, Mac, are the villains of the story? And are there any?
Well, I mean, this musical goes very much out of its way to really try and vilify Camilla and Charles. Like it goes really out of its way to really make like jump on that Camilla and Charles hate train that's been going since the 90s, when this really all kind of came to light of their extramarital affairs they were having. So I definitely would say the musical is wanting us to see them as villains. The question is more personal for me of, are there any? I would say there isn't. Because in any failed marriage, it's never just one thing. It's always a mix of multiple things that ultimately lead to a marriage and separation and ultimately divorce of a coupling. So I would definitely say, well, this musical is trying to make you see Charles and Camilla as villainous characters. For me, I go, there isn't any, in the sense of, it's funny, like I was after I watched the latest season of The Crown, I came out going, that Charles, he's an asshole. He's an awful person. But then I had to stop and go, no, he's a guy who was forced into a marriage that he never wanted, to a woman who he never truly loved. And when you look at it from that angle, some of his motives and some of his actions are there, where he's trying to go through the steps of kind of doing what royals did for a long time, which was go through the steps, present the wholesome marriage while doing something on the side with somebody else. And the trip up for him is that Diana's not going to accept that lifestyle. She wanted a partner who was there, committed to her. And so once again, it's kind of that ultimate kind of destruction of the marriage is ultimately kind of brought about by just lack of love, or lack of romantic love. Like like they say after they signed their separation papers, the first thing that Charles and Diana did was hug and cry with each other, realizing that it was really over and that they both were able to move forward in life and not be hateful and not be trying to destroy each other, but instead just be co-parents to William and Harry. And the fact that they were doing that up until she died, after the divorce was finalized, that really it was kind of Diana went off and did her thing. Charles was able to kind of start beginning the process of mending the relations, that the public relations. It's a long road for that. A lot of harm was done, but both by him and by the media taking sides. So I would definitely say the musical's taking the easy way out of still going Charles, Camilla bad, Diana good. I would say the bigger story here, if you're able to look at it that way, is that there's no villains. It's just two people who are missing each other. It's kind of like the last 5 years. The last 5 years is a story about two people in a relationship missing each other. And that's Charles and Diana. They are two people who were set on a course together, but they ultimately were two people who were bound to miss each other. She was 19. He was in his 30s. That's totally different eras of life that you're at that point. He was wanting somebody just to be the presentational wife. She was wanting somebody to be an actual partner with. Like, two totally different agendas, two totally different people. He's country, she's city, right? Like, they look good on paper. They both come from the same class of people, but they're just two totally different oil and water. And I think that's the ultimate tragedy, is that the villains, and just like in real life and in history, it's all gray. There is no clear black and white villain and victim. It is always a mishmash of multiple factors leading into an unfortunate tragic ending. So that's my answer to this question.
Yeah, no, and that's a perfect piggyback for me, because I totally agree that this musical, for some reason, felt it necessary to personify the villainy that I think Diana experienced throughout her life. Because something, again, just kind of referencing The Crown, which I figured we'd be doing quite often in this episode regardless, but what I really liked about The Crown is that they did what I'm assuming was a pretty realistic depiction of the toxic, prestigious environment that Diana was thrown into, right?
Absolutely.
Like, in that show, we kind of see that she was thrown to the royal dogs, if you may. Right? She was ill prepared. She was sort of depicted as the outcast from the get-go. And I think what this musical does at the end, so at our final snapshot of, and I know we have a question about this later, but I do want to bring it up now, of when they have kind of like the ensemble looking downstage and sort of saying their last moments after we hear of the crash, like of Diana's passing, and they walk forward. And to me, that kind of left me with like, oh, it's the media, it's the folks that sort of shunned her throughout her whole life. Those were the bad guys, right? Or those were the people who only saw the dress, didn't see the girl, only saw, the cowering, shy, didn't see the like proactive, loving mom, right? And so they tried to do that at the end, but again, they had Camilla, and this is getting specific, but they had, I'm pretty sure I remember this correctly. It was Camilla and Charles a little bit more down, and the Queen downstage than the rest of the ensemble. And that was awkward for me as well, because it was like, these three characters didn't really have, they had the most impact on the iteration of Diana we saw on this musical. And two of them, as you mentioned before, Charles and Camilla, kind of had the villainy cooking on the subplot, right? Subplot, like cooking on the sidelines. But it wasn't about them. Like, I think the message was, all of us kind of didn't give her the platform that she deserved, or maybe didn't give her the benefit of the doubt. And I wanted those characters to be absorbed into the ensemble, because I think that would have been more powerful of kind of like just a statement of humanity, if you will, too. Like we've all gone through the despairs and we've all gone through the excitements and we, you know, and like we're spotlighting this human who dies arguably because of too much spotlight, like with the car being paparazzi. So going back to who are the villains of the story throughout the whole piece, it very much was Charles and Camilla. But I was like, why are you trying to personify again, I think it was just this there was a kink in the patchwork, if you will, of okay, they're Camilla and Charles are our villains, or how is that going to flush out? And then at the end it was like, at least my viewing of it was everyone kind of is in the wrong, or everyone had a maltreatment of her in some shape or form. So I was like, what? It's like they started at something and they didn't finish it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I guess the question too is like, I don't, the question of like, are there any? I don't think there needed to be any.
There didn't need to be a villain at all. No.
Really, like, yeah, exactly. And there could have, like I said, there could have that sort of collective movement at the end, I think would pack a punch, but I don't think you needed like to follow the sort of musical formula, if you will, of like, okay, there needs to be like a downfall of this character and then like a subplot song for this character. And it was a bit distracting. And I think also like we've mentioned this outside of this conversation too, Mac, of I would love to see material on Charles and Camilla's life, right? Or see like an HBO series or something, just spotlighting them, just following them. And so, because I think quite often they are subplots to Diana's story.
They always are. Like even look in The Crown, right? I mean, the actress who played Camilla was the supporting character to Emma Corrin's Diana, right? I mean, but she got. I mean, the actress who Emerald Fennell. So like, she was fantastic, and she had some really poignant moments of, I can never win because I am the evil one in this pairing. I am the one who's stealing the husband. I am the other woman who will always be the villain, because in any good fairy tale, the woman has to be wronged to win. And I'm not the one being wronged. I'm the one who's doing the wronging, ergo. In the court of public opinion. And we just saw that now with Camilla being named Queen Consort one day. The first thing everybody was, should have been Diana. It's like, well, that's not how it's ended up here, people. Diana's passed. May she rest in peace. And Camilla's the one that Charles is married to now. Ergo, rightfully so, she should get the proper title of Queen Consort, because that is the title she will be, or the position she will be filling, whether she has the title or not. She will be chief consort to Charles as king one day, right? So that's the thing there. So, but yeah, oftentimes Charles and Camilla are pushed to the background for the sake of Diana being the more interesting victim of the story. It's what really should be done is all three of them are victims in this love triangle. All three of them have suffered in this. Diana suffered in her time through the marriage, and Charles and Camilla have never fully recovered from that, even though they have both been happily married now for decades. I mean, they were together basically once the divorce paper was signed. They didn't get married till the mid 2000s, 2005, I think it was, something like that. And ever since then, like, Camilla's been haunted. Basically, Diana's ghost continually haunts Camilla. No matter what she does, she will always be compared and looked down upon by people because she's not Diana. And I think that's the more interesting ending, is having them just blend into the mass of people who, I mean, the media is still vilified for what happened with Diana there. I mean, we'll never know what happened in that tunnel. Was it the car speeding too fast? Was it the driver who had too much to drink? Was it the paparazzi flashing the light bulbs? We don't quite know what happened there, but everybody has blood on their hands for what happened to Diana and the tragedy of her life. Even though I don't think Diana ever wanted to be seen as a victim to begin with. So the fact we keep victimizing her in her own story, it's like, I don't know if Diana would ever really want that. I think Diana made it very clear that she was moving on, finding love, moving forward with her boys. And so the fact we keep victimizing her, showcasing this one section of her life, that was probably the worst, most unhappy part of her life is like,
Yep.
oh, what are we doing here? Like, what's the story? Once again, what's the story we're telling about Diana?
Yep. And that is a beautiful launch pad to our next question, which I'll start us off on.
Yes.
What was missing from the history of Diana's life that you would have liked to see in this piece? And I think just to pick up exactly what you're putting down, Mac, of there is such a strength in her. And again, in just the movies I've seen with her in it, and The Crown, and the books I've read, and the things, she was such a powerful woman, like in a time where it was still, you know, I guess it was 70s, 80s, that the female voice was a bit louder, but still, vulnerability and risk came with being loud, and came with kind of choosing to go against the grain with things.
Yeah.
And so, especially to be the outcast in a royal family, the sort of, for lack of a better statement, like, F you, I'm going to do what I want sometimes, or like, you know, I want to be present for my son's, you know, race or something, I'm going to go, or like, I would like to talk to these children who have HIV and AIDS and hug them because they don't have anyone else. And it's that strength that I feel is backburnered a lot in these iterations of Diana. And so there is a scene in this piece where, again, it was kind of misplaced, unfortunately, but I did like what they were trying to do in the piece where she visited the HIV and AIDS patients.
Yeah.
It's so powerful that whole chunk of history is very personal to me. My mom is a pharmacist for HIV and AIDS patients. So, and she's a pioneer in a lot of that movement from the medical side. And I kind of grew up with that, and along with the political side too. And knowing that Diana was sort of a political or celebrity pillar in that movement for children and young folks who were scared and living in a time of nothingness and hopelessness. And she was kind of that beacon of light. And that's just sort of one charitable, or one, you know, I guess like one pathway that she was going to stand up for, she was going to represent, and she was going to relish in the humanity of, if you may, like, she represented a human aspect of the crown that I think historically lacks sometimes, because it is important for the tradition and the way of doing things. And I think there's a lot of potential that the Queen and Charles and everyone else could have learned a lot from Diana. And
I would
so
say they did. Like
right. And
changed the royal family.
Exactly. And so I kind of wanted to see, not only in this piece, but using it as a starting point while we're in the conversation, but in every iteration of her, of why aren't we highlighting that side of her? Right. Like I just watched a brief clip, I think it was a couple days ago, of either Harry or William. I didn't get the full backstory of it, but one of them was doing like a potato sack race. And at the end, there was it was like, a mother's race. Like all the mothers were called to the field to do a race. And Diana was wearing a skirt that day. And whoever was with her was like, no, you can't. Whoever's with her from like the royal, like her chaperone, if you will, was like, no, you can't do that. You wearing a skirt. And she's like, well, there's so many other mothers that have a skirt. Why can't I do it just because I'm wearing a skirt? And she defied the chaperone. It was like,
she ran the race.
And just like went underneath the thing and ran the race. And I was like,
I know exactly
girl.
the clip you're talking about.
Yeah. And so there's like that vivacity and that fire. And like her personality was her personality. You can't change that. But I just think, she's so subsequent to the royal family. And I think a lot of people who are tangential, but maybe did have an impact on the royal family, they're always overcasted, right? They're always kind of shadowed. So I guess, in a modern sense, in a modern lens, if we are bringing her back to the surface and we are talking about her, like we haven't stopped talking about her, but if we are highlighting her in a piece such as this and giving ourselves the opportunity to do that, I want to see like her at her core, like I kind of wanted to see the quote unquote like messy side of the real side of Diana. Because we already have so many things, so many, like I said, novels, series, movies of her in the royal family. We have a lot of stories with her through the lens of Charles and the Queen, etc. I want just her, you know. I want Diana, the true Diana, the musical. That's, and welcome to my like true Diana TED Talk. Mac, I'm gonna bring it to you.
So there's a few things that I think we're really missing, particularly for this show. One is the fact that we missed out on the rest of the royal family. The fact that historically both Prince Philip and Princess Margaret were actually very close with Diana. The fact that they really were people who took her under her wing. Like Princess Margaret really did understand some of the struggle Diana was going through because of her own failed marriage at the time. The fact that she never found love in the same way Princess Margaret did, and Prince Philip was the outsider once again. Like he was the prince of Greece and Denmark. Like he was the outsider who had to change his last name and not have himself be fully connected with this partner because she's the queen. Like basically, he was kind of the shepherd of if things had worked out, he would have been her mentor in that sense. Like he was prince consort to the queen. She would have been queen consort to Charles. So the fact that like they did have and the fact that more letters between Philip and Diana have come out in the last few years that show a really paternal relationship between the two of them. The fact that we never got that is really sad, because once again that would have added more character loss of when once again, like when the separation happens, like once again people like to say like, oh, the royal family hated her. It's like, no, they didn't hate her. So she was loved. It was just there also was growing pains there. I mean, she was trying to change an old establishment that is like any slow turning ship. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of work to turn a ship. It doesn't turn on a dime. And so the fact that, I mean, Prince Philip came in and he was the shaker of his day, right? Like he was the one that televised the coronation and things like that. Like, and we see that in The Crown repeatedly, that Philip is one that's pushing the boundaries in his time, and Diana was doing very much the same thing in her time. So the fact that we kind of lost some of that there, which was the fact that it wasn't all bad for Diana. She did have love for these people, her in-laws. It was just purely her and Charles as a couple didn't work. Like, and the fact that once kind of really the turning point historically was the 1992 book, the tell-all book. That was really kind of the one where she burned the bridge with everybody with her in-laws. Like Princess Margaret very notably shut her out. Philip was very upset about it. Like, and the fact that, like, once again, character choice of if you'd had them in there and had that scene, because we do have that moment when the book is published, like the fact that she loses. So it's a question of what did I gain, what did I lose? There's a song right there. The gain, like, the book sales are going up, so she's making money on the back end, but in return she lost key allies in her fight with Charles, right? Like character choices. And the other thing I would say that we're missing is going kind of back to Diana the victim is Diana was very media savvy in a time when that was not fully thought of yet. Like today, the fact there are PR firms who run the royal social media, who coordinate the social outings for Kate and William and Camilla and Charles and the Queen, and Edward and his partner. I forget her name right now. Sophie.
And he's the only one still married. I looked that up recently of all the kids. Yeah.
He is. So the fact that like they now have a PR team who are looking after that. Back then, that type of thing wasn't fully thought of. It wasn't fully comprehended because the royal family wasn't as in the media press until the 90s when it really kind of took off with the War of the Waleses. And the failure of Andrew's marriage and Anne's marriage. Like, once again, 1992 was a bad year for the Queen. She was very notable for saying that, like, this was the worst year. Her castle burns down, 3 divorces or separations, like, not a good time. And, like, the media just swoops on them,
to that,
right? And really kind of caught them from behind where they had never been in that situation before. And the fact Diana was savvy enough to understand the media landscape and knew, hey, if I go out in my revenge dress on the same night as Charles doing his big tell-all interview, I'm going to pull attention from him, which is the one thing he doesn't want. That's going to help me in my media battle against him. Great. Like that whole thing where she was very savvy in that. Like, once again, she was master manipulator. Like, I'm sure she absolutely loved the AIDS patients and all the humanitarian work that she did with the landmines and things like that. But I guarantee there also was a bit of a side to her at the time going, what is my media image? What am I doing? What am I achieving with by dressing this way or doing this? Like, Diana was no spring chicken on that front. Once she understood the media was going to be on her side and they were willing to tell her story and sympathize with her, like, she took that and ran with it a mile away. And unfortunately, it caught up to her once again and led to her ultimate downfall. And I think that's a story right there in itself of someone who tries to spin the media until it spins you.
Totally. And I think also this has come to mind and to the forefront now is going back to her age. Like, she was brought into this at age 19. Like, essentially that in like royal social media lens back in the day would have been the equivalent of like a child actor rising to fame, right?
Really? Yeah.
There's a risk that comes with that. There's like so much responsibility and so much ask and so much exhaustion because you're always having to be on, or you're always having to be, painted a certain way or in a certain lens, act a certain way, etiquette yourself a certain way.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's that, like, it's like she was in so young and then dealt the cards she was dealt when she finally did get some agency. It's almost like it's a classic case of, you see some folks who rise to fame at a young age and they just have a downfall when it all rushes to their head, right? And it starts, exactly, you nailed it on the head. You start kind of like pinning moments or pinning things against things and using it to your advantage in a negative way. And because I think you're right too. And I think, again, going back to The Crown, what I loved about the relationship of Charles and Diana is they sucked the villainy out. It was very much like the two of them have faults. I remember watching some of the episodes and being like, oh my gosh, I hate Diana right now. Or like, oh my gosh, I hate Charles right now. Because it was showing their like visceral sides and
there's a look Diana gives when she goes to hug the boy with AIDS in New York. And she hugs the boy, but then she gives a look to the camera. The newspaper camera, and it's just a little look up and a little tiny smile, like not big, but just tiny enough that you go, oh, she knows exactly what she's doing by doing this photo op.
Which is,
she didn't have to have a photo op. She could have just hugged the boy on his own. But the fact that the media's there and and Charles calls her on it, goes, we can hug people too. We can do exactly what you did, but we don't. And she goes, well, yeah, you don't, because you don't know love, right?
I feel like it's such a sticky situation too, though, because I would like to think that she would have been that sort of give all humanitarian.
I definitely think she was a give all. Yeah,
she was caught between
smart
like
enough
a rock and a hard
to know what she was doing too. Like you don't like humanitarians. Like people forget the amount of charities and things like that that the royals are patrons of, right? That aren't always pictured. So the fact that Diana was out also there like doing photographs, like she knew, and that's something I think we miss, is that Diana's savviness and smartness in an age when media was just coming into being, how entrepreneurial she was in knowing how to spin the media. Now, mind you, they probably didn't always reflect her inner feelings of. I guarantee you, she had love and affection for every child she hugged, every AIDS patient she with every landmine she helped uncover, all types of issues like that. Like she did that out of the goodness of her heart, but she also was media smart enough to know the type of image she's crafting, right?
I do think, though,
Charles and Camilla at the time.
Yeah. One thing, though, I think that, and again, it's kind of a chicken and egg situation, because spiraling us out of the 70s into the 80s, media was like on everybody's buffet plate.
Absolutely.
Right? It was like, this was the new hot thing. And so it's chicken and egg in a sense of like, the whole idea of what the royal image is, or like how do we get ourselves out there, was changing.
Absolutely.
And to sort of support Diana in a way, even though knowing that, once she knew she had this power, sure, I will agree with you, there was probably some negative angle or angle to use it as sort of like a tactic, if you will. But there's something about having her being a pillar of the royal family in the 80s at a time when media was the way people were responding to things, the way people preferred. She took that leap, which, again, going back to the royal family and them, again, we see this in The Crown, they're entrenched in tradition, right? And like you're saying, it's difficult to steer a ship. I think again, going back to The Crown, even though this is about Diana the musical, in the scene where we see Charles be like, well, we can hug people too. I'm like, but you don't, right? Like they don't. And the royal family was very much all like ruffle and posture and poise. And there was something of like jealousy,
but they wear gloves.
But there was a jealousy, and a bit of a jealousy, and I think almost like smack in the face of like, oh, right, I guess we could be doing what you're doing, Diana, too. Diana did it first.
She did. She absolutely did.
And so it's like, there's this chicken and egg situation. It's like, like no one wins here, whether if she, and so, I guess going back to the question of like, what was missing in the history of Diana's life, like,
I think it's a real story of power for her, where you see her at the beginning of her relationship with Charles, where she's mobbed by the media and she has to kind of put the camera out of the face, and you see her very uncomfortable deer in headlights. But by the time she's done at the end of her life, she's totally mastered them. She knows how to catch them, how to entice them into telling her story.
Yeah.
She knows how to bring focus to something that needs to be brought focus to. Like, nobody was talking about landmines in Africa the way she was. She went out there in the vest and the hard hat and totally brought attention to an issue that was huge at the time. Probably still is. I don't know. I'd have to go and look into that. But the fact that like she took something that was controlling her, as we saw with the royal wedding, where they were hounding her and kind of victimizing her in the sense of they were the ones controlling the story of who is she, what is she. Diana by the end going, no, I'll tell you how to tell the story. Like I'll give you the story versus you telling me what or hounding me. Now it's the other way around. I think that's the big story for her, is that she at 19 starts off as the deer. Also by the end she becomes the lioness who goes,
I love that.
This is the story. Like I this is what we're doing. Like this is what I'm doing with the media. I can spin it to help people. I can also spin it to hurt Charles and Camilla in the tabloid wars. I can do two things at once.
And I can
and that's sad.
I can be a mama lion too and protect my boys.
She totally was.
Them,
there's
give them as much of a normalized
story where she went up to the photographers and said, "Please, I'm with my boys. Leave us alone. I'll come see you later." And they did. They kind of went away and left her alone. But it's that thing of she went from not knowing how to use the media to becoming very much the queen of media by the end. Where ultimately then it kind of spirals out of control and ultimately leads to her downfall. But for a brief moment, it's a great arc right there. Doesn't know media, learns media, and by the end, the media gets savvy again, and she can't control it like she used to. There's a great character arc there that we kind of miss. It's more just snapping. Once again, it's all from the media. It's all from that final image of the media controlling Diana versus we never fully get to see Diana's power with the media controlling them. That I think we kind of miss in the story. Bringing it back to the original question, what was missing? Diana's
totally, and
controlled the media that she learned and utilized to her full potential.
And pirouetting us to the next next question, which I want to bring back. You just brought up a really awesome image of how Diana was sort of like a deer in headlights at the beginning of her whole like trajectory, being thrown into the royal dogs, as I mentioned earlier. And then how she ends up, this lioness who claws whatever she needs to claw to kind of remain agency for herself and protect her boys and try to kind of figure out who Diana is. So veering us back to Diana the musical. Apologies, folks, as we're kind of tying in so many different media depictions of our wonderful protagonists, but bringing us back, to the musical. So, Mac, like, how do you think this musical, this iteration of Diana in particular, paints the image of Diana? Like, how?
I would say not the best.
Yeah.
They paint her as a very kind of the jaded wife. Like the fact that they do a whole boxing ring scene with her and Camilla, when historically that's not what happened. Like, we know from people who were at the party, it was much more subtle. It was just Diana showed up at the party, they had a conversation in public, and she went home. It wasn't this big knockdown, drag out, Rocky fight, that type of thing. And like the fact that like they sensationalized so much of her story, like our friend Michael Roth was saying, how pointed out rightly that Diana was a big fan of the classical music. She was someone who could play the concert piano. And yet the fact that we have this number where Bruce Dow's playing the cello and it becomes this weird Elton John rock number. And where it's basically just saying poo-poo to classical music. It's like, no. There's a very famous clip of Diana showing up Charles, who knew how to play cello, by playing the piano better than him. So the fact that like she had an appreciation for classical music. So like once again, it paints a very kind of, she's either the angry wife, or she's the woman who is struggling in her marriage, or she's saying F you to the world, F you to the system, and I'm going to strike out with style and glamour versus brain and maturity that she was gaining along the way as a woman, as a mother, entering her 20s and into her 30s. So the fact that we don't get that, and it's more just, once again, going back to what we talked about at the very beginning, it was the snapshot glams and glitz of, let's hit the key story points. The revenge dress, the wedding dress, the style change entering into the 90s, the book, the war of the Waleses, the separation, like, and the crash. Like the fact that we're hitting all these kind of snapshot moments, and we're only hitting the surface of who she was, paints not the best picture of the woman who was far more complex, far more intuitive, far more savvy, far more human than what we're given. We are given the superficial Diana, the Diana who is all about the glitz and the glamour and the fashion, not, which, I mean, Diana was all about fashion too. Let's not be mistaken. Diana was a fashion icon who changed fashion, very much so. But she also was someone who could get down to the jeans and the shirt and just go play with the boys in the yard. Like she was human. And I think what this piece missed was the human element.
Absolutely.
Diana was. They focused too much on the glitz and the glamour of the name Princess Diana, not the human who behind the name.
I couldn't have said that better myself, Mac. I totally agree. And just to add, again, literally how you said it was beautiful, but to add and just to speak to, you kind of put a title to the different snapshot scenes, right? Of like the War of the Whales and her FU to the world with the revenge dress, and every one of those snapshots had like Diana as the Diana in the lens of jealousy, or Diana in the lens of bitch, if you would. There's my swear word for this episode. Diana in the lens of angry wife. Diana in the lens of desperation. So often I find there is like a desperate glaze that is put on her character, not only in this musical, but in other iterations too, that I'm like, sure, maybe there was a part of her character that kind of had that, but I feel like it is always just like frosted on, like this whiny, demure, which I'm like, I don't see that serving other quality. Like I just feel like I feel like it's often highlighted that it's frustrating to kind of watch. And so I think that this piece again highlights that, along with so many other pieces of media that surround her life, but especially and with kind of again going back to this disengaged script and score, right? So like the foundation of the whole piece was sort of shambly. How can we possibly have a full crisp through line of our protagonist, right? A full crisp arc when the form itself isn't supporting what it needs to support. And again, maybe this is, now that we're unpacking this, maybe that's like a dramaturgical essay I maybe want to get into, of how like the mismatched form and shambly kind of vibe of the score and the script and the characterization of this piece, is it supposed to be kind of representative of the push and pull and multiple facades and mismatched personas that Diana had to take on, or that Diana was depicted as, right? Like, but I wasn't able to, again, I wasn't able to fully marry myself to that possible takeaway. But yeah, I was left with a lackluster feeling towards Diana too. And for someone who I guess has never experienced The Crown or has read her book or knew a lot about Diana, I would be interested to see like sort of what they think of, if we are just thinking of Diana as a character, right? Like, we know this is a biopic, this is Diana, Princess Diana. But if someone had no idea about the royal family or didn't know, like, I would just be curious to know what folks' thoughts were of, like, as this character, right? As our protagonist character in this musical. I don't think, they were given the best conclusion. I don't think they were given the best sort of storyline, blueprint, if you will. Aside from the historical due diligence that a lot of us seeing this musical probably do know of, that was lacking, which was unfortunate. But yeah, so as we kind of conclude that thought, let's dive into our concluding thought, which has to do with the piece's conclusion, which again, I kind of unpacked a bit of my thoughts on it earlier, but I want to add a different sort of flavoring to this question of, what are your thoughts, Mac, on the piece's conclusion, like on how the story cinched? But I want to also have us unpack the piece's conclusion, now knowing that this musical is not, like, its run was cut on Broadway.
Yeah.
Why, I kind of want us to unpack, like, why maybe that is, or what impact does this kind of short-lived musical on the stage now, right? It's forever, as far as we know, forever preserved on Netflix. But yeah, what does that kind of do to the story that was arguably written for the stage first? So a lot to go with there, but I will.
Yeah, oh my goodness, you'll probably have to remind me of some of the points I got to cover along the way. The conclusion, I mean, it's interesting. Like, I actually went back and rewatched the end just to kind of refresh myself, because it's been a hot sec since we watched it. So for me, the conclusion is they were kind of trying to have their cake and eat it too, where it's, you wanted to give Diana the triumph of the separation, but then they also wanted to shoehorn in everything that happened after the separation, which is the landmines, all that type of stuff, and then ultimately the crash and her death. They all kind of tried to shoehorn in that into the ending montage, and I'm like, you didn't have to do that. So I feel once again they were trying to cram so much into this musical. There's like
very rushed.
We're like, we don't know how to end this show while getting it all in, so we'll just do a bit of a video montage-y voiceover ending, which kind of really detracted from the moment of Diana's triumph. And I mean, if your story's about Diana coming into her own and coming out on top after a very difficult time, then let it end on that note. Like, don't second guess yourself on that. If that's the story you want to tell, by all means, tell that story and just own it and go. We all know what happens in the end. I mean, the fact that there's in the final scene with the Queen, that she offers royal protection, and Diana refuses. And I mean, I know when I watched this, I just went, "Oh no, Diana! Like, you just signed the ultimate downfall of yourself." Is that everybody said if she'd had proper protection and security, the ultimate accident could have been avoided. It's kind of the Titanic not seeing the iceberg soon enough and steering straight ahead and ignoring the warnings, and she's not seeing the danger of the media at that time. So there's enough foreboding in that final scene between her and the queen that we didn't need to cram in the death montage in there.
Yeah.
Just let her have her moment at the end. Let her win, which is what you were. If I'm understanding the musical, that's what you were wanting to do. So let her have the win. End on that note, and just let her walk off into the sunset. I think that's a more beautiful note to end her story on. For on stages, is let her walk off into the sunset with her boys. Like, have two young actors come out. She takes her. Yeah, it's kind of like Spencer. The ending of Spencer with Kristen Stewart, where the musical ends with her, or the film end. I wasn't the biggest fan of the film, but the ending was nice, where she kind of gets to drive off with her boys, which is what she ultimately wants. So the fact she gets to walk out of the meeting with the queen, she gets to see her boys, and they walk off into the sunset together. Yeah, I think that's a better ending than anything.
Well, and there's like a powerful image of her kind of walking up stage and being like in silhouette, right? And we see like just this body of like empty darkness, kind of, but it's pungent and it's there and it's stark, and it has all the attention that it deserved. Yeah, one would argue, or that it could have, right? It shouldn't, no face, no flashy dress, just a silhouette. And then lights out kind of thing. And you're kind of left with that. Like that's that silhouette, that shadow, that empty void, and the inner side of her kind of thing, right? Without all the glitz and the glam.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would have said for the ending is do that and just give her the win that you want to give her. I mean, the music kind of starts with kind of a bit of an Evita beginning, where it's like she comes in and she sings, presumably after she's dead. And so if you're going the Ava like Evita route, let her have her moment and then let her walk off. I mean, we all know she dies. You don't have to sledgehammer. I mean, once again, this musical was very sledgehammery to begin with, so I'm not overly shocked that they sledgehammered us right at the end there one final time. But I just go, let her have the win, let it be done. I think I answered all the questions, or did I miss something?
No, that's pretty well. Yeah, because I'm gonna take it, and then I'll bring the sort of add-on thoughts back. But I totally agree with you, and the whole silhouette vibe. I like that, or something like that, where right, you just ended in a high, ended in a win, to preserve a little bit of her agency that was taken away from her when the crash did happen, right? Like there was so much, like how her loss happened. She lost 10 times more than, so it came out of left field a little bit. The ending, it was very abrupt, again, flashy. And I talked about this earlier, right? The whole, what is the statement of the rest of the ensemble being on stage, and then that walk forward? It's like, are you walking against? Is this like all of the characters now are divorced from themselves, and these are just the actors kind of taking a stance in Diana's story, and they're the ones like coming when they walk down stage? Is that the actor kind of like, we've learned her story, we know her true story, and now let us walk on and tell her true story beyond what you just saw? That was like, a slight glimpse into what I think that final moment can mean. Again, it was placed upon a canvas. It was almost like this musical to me was like a beautiful canvas, but just like a lot of different styles and a lot of different color palettes placed on the same canvas. Yeah. That I was like, not sure what's happening here. And I just think because of the rushness, because of the, veering away from our protagonists and not being strong as to why you are turning to the ensemble, it left me with a bit of like, an unsettling, upsetting conclusion. Yeah. But to take us back to my add-on thought of how this piece clearly was made for the stage, and then maybe possibly the times we're living in due to the pandemic, which I think this is where it went, why they recorded it. But I guess this is kind of just like, not only with this piece, Mac, but just in general of like, we've done a lot of these conversations with our review panels and with Duet Reviews and the Cup of Hemlock Theatre. We're fortunate to have these pro shots, these abilities to kind of be able to see through the lens of a camera stage work. And a lot of it was, you know, we knew the pieces were done on stage first, and then as an after fact, thankfully, due to archivals, we have a preserved piece that we are allowed to watch. But this piece's origin has a bit of a different trajectory because arguably it was staged for the stage to have a life. And then possibly due to the pandemic, they made the project choice of filming for Netflix. Unless, correct me if I'm wrong, if that was already kind of in the works.
I don't know if it was in the works ahead of time.
Right. Okay, sure. And then after that, it still releases to Broadway on stage. So it kind of has this ping pong thing of like rehearsed for the stage, written for the stage, and for live theater, then gets placed into a pro shot kind of preserved setting, but then comes out of that back to the stage. And I guess like I think this is a good opportunity for you and I, Mac, to kind of like just have our thoughts, opinions on that. Like, what is that? And then to know that they're returning this digital facet of the piece to the stage. It had a short run. And again, living the times we're living in, due to the pandemic, like there could be so many extraneous forces that are working against the longevity of this piece. But yeah, like what are your thoughts on this, Mac? Like how, you know, like why do you think it ended when it ended? What are maybe the advantages and disadvantages of going digital and then popping out to live again? I'm curious.
Well, I mean, so I definitely, as much as I enjoyed this pro shot, I definitely think it ultimately kind of was the death nail in the coffin of this show. I mean, the reviews weren't great either, so enough bad reviews will sink any show, because the court of public opinion is dominated by when people are looking to spend their money. What's the first place they look to is what are the people who have already seen the show saying? It's just like us going to the movies. Do I want to pay to see the Batman, or should I pay to go see Uncharted?
What's the ratings on Rotten Tomatoes? Like, what am
I? Yeah, Rotten Tomatoes, right? And I mean, this musical didn't get a good score. It didn't get a good critique. So the mix of the critics and the audiences already not being big fans of it, mixed with now you add in, why would I pay $200 to go see it on Broadway when I can sit in my living room and enjoy it just as much, being even closer than I would ever be in a Broadway house? Why would I do that? Like, it's unfortunately, I don't know if they ever thought they were going to open on Broadway and that's why they chose to do it. I don't know their exact reason of why they chose to do a pro shot.
Yeah.
Good for them that they did. I think more shows should go pro shot. I think anytime a show is closing on Broadway, there should be a pro shot done so it can be seen by the masses, or at least do a pro shot of the original cast before the original cast leaves. Like how many times have we heard, I wish they had done a proper pro shot of Wicked with Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth and Joel Grey and Norbert Leo Butz, right? Like, because I mean, I know I was too young to go see it on Broadway, but people who saw it said it was terrific. Like seeing Michael Crawford, Sarah Brightman in Phantom of the Opera, seeing the original Phantom Christine. Right? There's a benefit to doing these pro shots, is it makes it accessible for people who would never have the opportunity, like people in the Midwest, up here in Canada, because we can't get across the border until recently. Like it gives us the chance to see a piece we probably would never have seen otherwise. So as much as I appreciate it and I very much enjoyed watching it at home, I also go, ultimately, unless your show is super successful and warrants me going to see it live, like there are
like
very
Hamilton.
Hamilton,
potentially,
Lion King, like the Lion King on Broadway. Like I'm sure if they did a pro shot, people would still want to go see it live because it's such a spectacle. Same thing with Phantom, same thing with Les Mis, Miss Saigon, even Cats. Those shows are spectacles that warrant being seen live. This show proved, once you saw the pro shot, because the material wasn't there to support it, you kind of go, okay, saw it, seen it, done it, don't need to go pay more money to go see it live. I'm not going to get anything new out of it. I'm not going to get a new perspective. The show is kind of it is what it is. So I mean, I hope that this show doing what it did. I mean, Hamilton's ticket sales are actually up since it came back. And people attribute that to people seeing the pro shot and not wanting to go see it live. So like that just goes to show, if you have a good show and people can see it at home and you bring it to them live, that usually means they'll be able to, like, there's more of an interest to go and see something tangible in person, because you go, I liked it that much when I saw it at home, I'll like it even more. Like, it's kind of like these new things that they're doing, which are these films in concert. I don't know, do you have you heard of these, Jill?
No, I have not.
Yeah, so what it is basically films are being toured across North America and in Europe. And what they do is they take the orchestra track out of the film, and then a live orchestra and choir, if there's a choir in the soundtrack, perform the show or perform the music live. So I've done it with Bond, Casino Royale. I've done it with the Harry Potter movie, and I'm going to see Princess Bride. And in each of these times, I mean, I know Princess Bride is, I'm excited for that, but each of these times you go see it, you get this visual connection, and I go, okay, that was worth me spending the money.
Right.
Live, because I love the movie at home, but now I get to go get a whole new experience seeing this music performed live for me. It adds a new element to the film. It adds a new experience. Same thing with this. I watched the pro shot of Cats from the 90s. I still ended up going to see it in theater because I go, there's something special about seeing Cats done live in person. There's something special about going to see that helicopter scene, the Fall of Saigon, live in person, to feel that energy, that destruction, that despair, that helicopter fly. There's something special about seeing it live. That, yes, it's cool to see it shot for the 25th anniversary of Miss Saigon, but there's something totally different about seeing it in the theater. It gives you a different experience. I think with what this show proved with its pro shot is there was nothing worth seeing in person. You there's nothing warranting you going to see that there. I mean, the costume changes are great. You get an up close look at them. What am I going to miss?
That's the thing. There's almost like elements of this piece, like the magical elements, which a lot of that, like rested in the costume changes, rested in, we talked about like the staging elements, right? Like the specific gobos that were used in lighting and the ensemble, like succinctness between everyone, the chorus members, especially, like it was almost more breathtaking to see that up close, like to see that artistry up close than seeing it in person. And I think you're right too. There wasn't like a giant chandelier for this musical, or there wasn't like costume pieces similar to like Lion King, where like the intricacy of like the costumes of that piece are stunning, and to be in the room with those and to see the puppetry and stuff like that of certain pieces, like there's a liveness that resonates in those pieces that this one served really well in a pro shot digitized form, I think. And I'm so curious of like, if again, a chicken and egg situation, if they kind of knew that, and then alongside, like I said, these extraneous variables of pandemic, and there was so much traction with The Crown, with the new seasons filtering out, if this was just like like an opportunity that they had to cinch, right, of riding that Diana wave, like we said earlier, with The Crown happening on Netflix, the idea that folks were turning to streaming services in and out of the pandemic, because that sometimes was the only access to creativity people had. It was like, let's put it on. And then it just, I would love to be in the room where they just still decided to go forward of putting it in person, of like, I wonder if it was a conversation of like, let's try this. Let's just try to put it on stage, see what happens, right? Like folks are hungry to come back to a live something or other, whatever it is. Or if there was like, if it was a bit of a like we'll see what happens kind of vibe, right? And then what did happen was a shorter run. And again, there's so many things floating around the world right now that probably contributed to the decisions made. But I think you're right, Mac, that this piece, it wasn't worth going into person for if you had the opportunity to see it digitized. And honestly, you probably would have gotten more like you're saying, like being up close and personal
Mhm.
to the magic moments and to the flashy, the like having, there was times in the piece too where I was like blinking a lot because there was so much paparazzi happening,
Mhm.
like right at,
Yeah.
I kind of felt like what Diana might have been going through.
Mhm.
Um, but to be kind of in the balcony seat, if you will, in a live
Yeah.
theater space, I don't know if I would have had that same response.
Yeah, exactly.
I just think it's so interesting. It's very interesting, and I'd be curious to see if this sort of, like you were saying, Mac, with what you're describing with this like film and orchestration. I think that's such a
Mhm.
brilliant sort of marriage of two mediums, right? Where we have
Mhm.
like a digitized, preserved piece of art, and then
Yep.
you're adding a live experience. It kind of reminds me of, I went to like an orchestration of the Game of Thrones score.
Yeah.
So it was like a
Mhm.
live concert where it's like, this is the
Yeah.
music that was constantly piping through my ear, my surround sound system, cuddling
Yeah.
up with my family on the couch to watch each episode of Game of Thrones. But now I'm seeing it live with like bodies moving
Mhm.
together, bows,
Yeah.
stringing
Yeah.
together. And I was emotional. It was like an added experience. And I'm curious to see, as we kind of come out of the digitized sort of lockdown moments that the pandemic has given us, if there is going to be more of that marriage, or if there is going to be more of productions that kind of exist like this, where maybe they were made live, they go digital, and then they go live, or they were made digital and then they go live and then they go digital, like just a shakeup of form. um Anywho, that seems to be a
Mhm.
catalyst for a conversation for another day. And that,
Indeed.
but that brings us to the end of our thoughts for Diana the musical.
Yeah. I mean, Jill, would you recommend people watch Diana the Musical if they're futzing around on Netflix on a Friday night to see what's out there?
I think so. I think, like, why not?
Mhm.
Maybe have one or two of these nearby, if you
Mhm.
will. Create, maybe like a little fun game for yourself. It's fun. Like I said,
Yeah.
the music is fun. The
Ryan really
performances are the
liked it.
performances are
Yeah.
stellar. Oh yeah, Ryan was giggling throughout
Yeah. He understood
the
what it
whole
was going for, and I mean,
thing.
Jill and
Right.
I were both sitting there sometimes shocked and shaking our heads, but Ryan, our wonderful co-producer, watched it along with us, and he was having a hoot of a time.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it's definitely worth a watch. But yeah, but just there's it's a variety of taste. I'll leave it at that.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. Well, Mac, this was awesome. I think we unpacked,
Yeah. Oh my goodness, we got
again,
into
if
so much with
anything, we
this.
we had the experience of watching a Broadway caliber performance on a streaming service that all of us can have access to, or can borrow someone's Netflix password to have
Yeah.
access to.
Mhm.
So definitely give it a watch if you would like.
Mhm.
And as usual, as we round out these episodes, Mac, would you like to plug your socials?
Sure, you can find and follow me at Mackenzie Horner. You can follow my podcast, Before the Downbeat, a musical podcast, where we talk all about musicals. We will not be covering Diana the musical anytime soon, as we have a 10-year rule in place in order to cover a show, is that it has to be at least 10 years old to give proper reflection and introspection. So we won't be covering that anytime soon, but there's definitely some other great musicals out there that we're covering. I mean, as of this week, we are releasing our episode about Bye Bye Birdie, all about the Americana bygone era of the 1950s. So lots was discussed there, and we get it all into class and spectacle and how does it influence a musical. So there's lots of great stuff there. So check that on out. Before the Downbeat, a musical podcast.
All right.
Jill, how about
Thank you.
you? Where
Thank
do
you.
people follow you?
Yes, as per usual, my artist Instagram account,
Mhm.
Jillian.robinson96. I believe that is my handle. It's been a while since I've said one of these. But nevertheless, yes, find me there. I have some projects coming down the pipe, so I will probably post posters or video snippets, clips of things, down the line. So keep your eyes peeled for that if need be. And as always, be sure to follow Cup of Hemlock on all of our socials. And if you are watching this on YouTube, be sure to subscribe, like, comment. We'd love to hear from you. Similarly, ratings on our podcast channel too. And
Perfect.
other than that, I think we can sign ourselves out there, Mackenzie.
Cheers,
as always,
Jill.
folks.
Hip, hip.
Yes, I have no more drink left, but yes, cheers. Stay safe, folks. Stay well. Stay happy. Do what you got to do to get us through these times. We love you here at Cup of Hemlock, and we will talk to you soon. Cheers, everyone. Bye.
Love it. Thanks, everybody. Bye.